meetings to order. I would like to read the Pembroke Land Acknowledgement Statement. As we gather today, I would respectfully acknowledge on behalf of Council and the community that the City of Pembroke resides on the unceded territory, traditional territory of the Algonquin people. We thank the generations of people who have taken care of this land for thousands of years. It is with this statement that we honor and respect the Algonquins on whose land we reside. I'll call the meeting to order, ladies and gentlemen. Disclosure of pecuniary interest and general nature thereof of the meeting of August 13th, 2004. Seeing none. Approval of the amendment, approval or amendment of the meeting agenda. Moved by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Plummer. Those in favor? The agenda is approved. The approval of the minutes of the combined committee of July 16, 2024. Errors or omissions? If not, I would look for a mover. Moved by Councillor Purcell, seconded by Councillor Fernier. Those in favor? Carried. Any business arising from those minutes? Seeing none, we'll proceed. Delegations. Renfrew County Ribfest, municipal significance. And we have our wonderful employee here to give us a background, Mr. Durashi.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair. So this evening we have Mr. Dennis Neefin of the Renfrew County Ribfest in attendance via Zoom. And he is here tonight to present a request to bring Ribfest to the City of Pembroke, September 27th to the 29th. So following this report during the combined committee, we do have a report coming to designate the event as municipal significance under the AGO. So I think without further ado, I'll pass it over to Mr. Neefin, and he can deliver his presentation. Thank you.
Welcome, Mr. Neefin.
Mr. Mayor, City Council members, staff, pleasure to be here. I'm very excited to be bringing some fun and exciting events to the City of Pembroke. I'm coming today because I'm looking for municipal importance for our event for the purpose of securing a liquor license for the purpose to sell beer and RTDs, ready to serve drinks and cans, at Renfrew County Ribfest, September 27, 28, 29. So, would you like me to explain the event to you guys?
Yes, please go ahead.
Sorry about that. I was supposed to be there. I landed late, so I'm on the side of the road in Sterling right now, almost in Pembroke. But so I'm the director of the Western Canada Ribfest tour. And I've started bringing the events back into Ontario from our tour. You guys may remember that we had Ribfest in Petawawa prior to COVID, but since then they haven't gone back. The tour that left Petawawa, they've made it known they're not going back that way. So I put in a bid through the Western Canada Ribfest tour to extend our tour as we come back through Northern Ontario to come to Pembroke, Ontario. So I've been granted the permission from the Ribfest side of the event. And I love Pembroke, and I think it'd be a great fit. And so we're looking to bring 3 of the top 4 rib teams from North America back to Pembroke, set up in the waterfront area, and run a free community event throughout the weekend. And when I say free, I mean like activities for the kids, entertainment, bands, things like that, and also partner with a few groups to make this a community event. I'm very excited about this. We've had a very successful tour so far this year, touching the hearts of a lot of communities, and I think if we can, host this event this year and grow it over the next coming years, this could be a staple event in the community. And Ribfest is excited to make it our end of year tour show, so they've all committed to put in a lot of resources to this as well to make sure that we're bringing the best product possible and we're giving back to the community as much as possible as well.
Want us to ask questions as we go along, or do you want to go through the presentation, or is there more, Mr. Neefin?
I'm definitely open to questions as we go along. As of right now, I didn't really have this presentation much as an overview of the event, but how this event works is we come in on Thursday and we set up the rib trucks down in the parking lot there, the stage, all the tables and chairs, tents, things like that. So by Thursday night, we're fully set up, ready for inspection by parks, health, everyone else, every other identity needs to come in there and be part of the event to oversee our safety, that's fire inspector, things like that. When the event opens up on the weekend, we try to make this as much of a community event as possible. We've already got partnerships with Algonquin College. I reached out to the Robbie Dean Counseling Center to be one of the beneficiaries of the event, as well as we always, in every city we go to, do as much as we can for the food bank. especially this time of year, it's very important to make sure we're giving them as many resources as possible. So our event would take place daily from 11 a.m. to 9 p.m. And that would include liquor consumption to 9:30 p.m. as well. Now, for the event itself, everyone's welcome to come be part of Ribfest. Come on down, bring a lawn chair, listen to the music. To bring the kids down, go into bouncy castles. If you do want to purchase some food, there's a variety of different vendors. So there is the rib trucks, but we also invite some local vendors as well. And then also throughout the weekend, we set up a lot of activities and contests for the community part of. So everything from like a cornhole tournament to, if we have the room, a show and shine with a car show, things like that. And then we conclude the Sunday with our big rib competition, which is where we grant the banners and hardware of Best Ribs, Best Sauce to the rib trucks. And we're pretty excited because there's never been a Pembroke Ribfest banner ever hosted before. So this will be the first time for that. The reason why I'm coming to you guys today, I was out west the last 10 years. I've just relocated back to Ontario. I'm staying with some family over in Pembroke on Hazley Bay Road, as well as kind of go back and forth to Peterborough, Ontario. But I want to bring a lot of the good I was able to do out west back to Ontario, and mostly back to Renfrew County and Pembroke. So I'm excited to have this opportunity and just looking to answer any questions and just kind of just put everyone at ease too. I know it seems like it's a little bit of short notice for such a scale of event, but for me it's event 21 instead of event 1. It's we're 20 shows deep by the time we get to Pembroke. So
Very good. Mr. Drushi, did you want to add anything before the questions begin, or?
Yeah, sure, Chair. So I guess I should let Council know that we have met with Mr. Neefin. We did thoroughly go through the logistics. We do believe that the event would fit down at the waterfront. I know it's very similar to the setup of, say, Canada Day festivities or the multicultural, so I do believe that it would be a good fit. We've gone through everything from the placement of the rib trucks right down to the fencing. So I think we're pretty confident on our end that we think that the event could be executed. Thank you.
Very good. Councillor Kale, Councillor Purcell.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd be happy to motion that we designate the Renfrew County Ribfest event to be an event of municipal significance to satisfy the requirements of the AGCO. Do we want to stop there and then I'll have more comments if there's a seconder?
Yep. Is there a seconder? The Deputy Mayor seconded. Go ahead, Councillor Kale.
Thank you. So to me, we have had a string of wonderful events this year in the city of Pembroke, from Canada Day to the Multicultural Fest to Music for a Cause, where I had the opportunity to meet Mr. Neffen, and we were right there at the waterfront, sort of going over his thoughts. I've looked through his report, which I think is probably one of the most detailed reports I think I've seen for a request like this. But as Mr. Neffen said, this for us this might be the first Rib Fest, but for him it's just another stop on the tour. So I feel it's almost akin to when the Midway comes to town. They're the professionals; they know exactly what they're doing. You give them their space, and they set up and they take care of things. And certainly, I hope council will support this event, and I certainly look forward to attending what I'm assuming at this point will probably be our last major event on the 2024 calendar down at the marina. But like I said, we've had a string of success downtown and at the marina so far this year, and I hope it continues.
Councillor Purcell and the Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Chair. I was simply just going to second, but I do agree with Councillor Keel in regards to the string of events that we've had this summer. It's been incredible. I think that it's a good fit. I think looking at the presentation, that seems like it was well thought out, and I do have some, appreciation that they're going to be their 21st event. So I see that there's really no concerns in terms of that offering.
Deputy Mayor, Councillor Lafreniere.
No, just echo what the other councillors said. It's another destination event for Pembroke, along with what we've had so far and what we have coming up, also with the fiddling and step dancing and the stereotypical Lasso Saloon event in September. So thank you for bringing this to Pembroke.
Councillor Lafreniere.
Yeah, a few years ago we used to have our own waterfront festival, quite a few years ago now. It started off to be a great event, turned into be one very expensive event for us to run. As a municipality, we faced astronomical costs when it comes to fencing, security, different protocols we had to set up for alcohol, distribution. So I want to say kudos to you for taking that work off our hands and taking care of all of it. I know that I met with the Recreation Department last week, we discussed this, and so we were asking about fencing and all that type of thing. So I guess your crew takes care of all that? You just come in, set it up? So if I could ask you. Yeah. So that's wonderful. Kudos to you, and it takes it off our plate, and great. Thank you.
Further?
And just, if I can speak to that for 1 second, sorry.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
But also, Ribfest does try to be an economic driver for the community. So everything we need from generators, fencing, we try to source locally first. So we'll go to the builders there who have that materials we can rent. We don't bring our own stuff. So we're renting, 60 hotel rooms for a week. We're renting generators. We're eating in restaurants. And that's one of the things we like to do to give back to the community is, spend money in the community because they support us.
Go ahead, Councillor Fernie.
Yeah, just further to that, that's right. We appreciate what you are doing, bringing that to Pembroke. We have another event going on that day, and I think they'll enhance each other, and that's on our agenda tonight as well. So I think the two will work very well together. Thank you.
Mr. Neefan, if I may, from the chair, we had a busker fest here just this past week, and from my understanding, there was over 6,000 people attended. How do you propose to promote your event to ensure that perhaps you have the same success scenario?
So part of the reason of calling it Renfrew County Ribfest was to include the whole county. I understand that Pembroke's its own municipality. That's why we're here today as well. But our plan is to get as many groups involved who could use this as a platform to either raise much needed funds or awareness for their causes. We want to see anyone who wants to be part of the event part of it, but also in return, they'll be talking about the event, so it's good. We have a very big marketing budget for this event, so that's everything from radio to social media. We've already started building partnerships. So I said I've been working with the Student Foundation from Algonquin College, as well as reaching out to a lot of just local community people when it comes to sponsorship or volunteers. I've already reached out to numerous companies and people. My father's a big supporter of this. He's really excited, but he connects me with a lot of people in the community, and from local bands to local businesses, and they've all jumped on us 100%. So, word of mouth is going to be a big one. We would be asking permission from the city to use some billboards. I was talking to the municipality of Renfrew County, and we talked about partnering up for one of their events that's happening on the morning of the Saturday, Taste of the Valley. And they're on board to collaborate together and bringing all those people over here after they're done there at 3 p.m. So there's a lot of opportunity just to get the word out just through partnerships and communication. But we do have a pretty big marketing budget for marketing as well.
What type of ribs, if I may ask? Pork, beef? Is there a mix?
So we're bringing the ribs. We're bringing the pork ribs, the beef ribs. We got pulled pork, brisket, mac and cheese, potato salad, beans, coleslaw. We're bringing it all.
Thank you. Thank you. Is there anything further you'd like to add, or Mr. Durocher, before we call the question?
No, I don't have anything further to add.
Thank you for coming, Mr. Neefan. The motion is on the floor, moved by Councillor Keel, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Those in favor of the Ribfest coming? Against? Carried unanimously. There you go. Thank you.
Thank you for your time, everyone.
Move on to the next item, Mr. Durocher. We're done with the Ribfest.
Yeah, yes.
Going to carry on then with the Pembroke Lumber Kings agreement.
All right, thank you. So the recommendation for this report is that the combined committee of council approve a bylaw to authorize the execution of a one-year rental agreement with the Pembroke Lumber Kings Junior A team. So just a bit of background on this report. So as everyone does know, of course, the Lumber Kings are a historical franchise in the community, and they've been playing Sunday night hockey for many, many decades. The City of Pembroke and the Pembroke Lumber Kings have been under agreement for the past 4 seasons, and that recently did expire July 31st. So we are recommending a one-year agreement that will improve the overall working relationship with both the corporation as well as the team. And we did sit down with the owner of the team, and we discussed some changes for this year's agreement. And the changes to the agreement are, the first one being any outstanding amounts owed to the city we paid in full prior to the team accessing ice for the upcoming 2024-2025 season. So to confirm, the team has paid in full as of August 12th. The second point is implement a payment plan for this upcoming season. So essentially this is to alleviate any outstanding money towards the end of the year. Third one being advertising will be billed monthly from September to April, and this is something that the owner actually really liked that we were putting in. And again, it's just to alleviate that large amount owing at the end of the season. Fourth one being failure to pay invoices after 30 days will result in loss of practice times, and failure to pay after 90 days will result in loss of game times. So when we were taking a look at the agreement, we did massage the agreement a little bit. Originally, it did say 15 days. Typically in our world, it's always 30 days. Folks are billed and have that amount of time to pay. So we did make sure that it was in line with that as well. Schedule. And finally, the team will pay for any in-ice textiles in advance to facility plan startup at the Pembroke Memorial Center. And just in speaking with the owner, it just, we can't wait once our plant goes on and we're building ice, and make sure that they will get their logos in. $55,000 and $65,000 in generated revenue for this upcoming season. So thank you.
Thank you. Questions of Mr. DeRoche, Councillor Purcell, Councillor Lafreniere?
Thank you, Mr. Roche, for your report, and thank you for all the hard work that you've been doing in terms of, negotiating with Mr. Armstrong in regards to the contract. I think it's a very good contract, it's a fair contract. I think it meets our needs, and I recommend that we approve a bylaw to authorize the execution of a one-year rental agreement with the Pembroke Lumber Kings Junior 18.
Mr. Fernier? Is that a motion?
Yes.
Motion?
Correct. Motion.
I'll second the motion.
Seconded by Councillor Fernier, and she'll
And a
comment.
yeah. I want to commend the Parks and Rec Department, you specifically, Jordan, for renegotiating this, and I think you did a great job. I also want to commend your staff for the issues that you had with the ice, putting the ice in this year with the extreme heat. Jordan was explaining it. We won't ask him to go in depth, but I just want to say thank you and your staff, if you could pass that along. I know it's very stressful when you have a deadline, and I know that all the users were quite accommodating as well, but good work. Thank you.
Motion on the floor, moved by Councillor Purcell, seconded by Councillor Fernier. Are there further questions? Seeing none, I'll call the question. Those in favor? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next item, we have our planner, Ms. Soriel, to comment on Bill 185, Cutting Red Tape to Build More Homes Act, and the changes made to the Ontario Planning Act. Good evening, Ms. Soriel.
Good evening. So the province of Ontario introduced Bill 185, which was the Cutting Red Tape to Build More Homes Act, on April 10th, 2024, and it received royal assent in June of this year. So Bill 185 introduces the following changes to the Planning Act. Under the first one is the pre-application consultation requirements. So municipalities will no longer be permitted to require pre-application consultation meetings with developers and applicants. Instead, these meetings would be done on a voluntary basis. So this applied to all planning applications. So this reenacted subsection does not include the authority for council or planning boards to pass a bylaw requiring consultation. So presently, our official plan does have that to meet that requirement when it came out. So this change means the city would have to amend its official plan to remove that requirement for mandatory pre-consultation meetings. The second item that affects municipalities are the fee refunds. So the application fee refund requirement through Bill 109 for failure of a municipality to decide on a zoning bylaw amendment or any other planning application, if it didn't decide or if it didn't make a decision on time within the timelines that were provided, has now been repealed. We would have had to pay back all the application fees if they weren't done within the time limits. And now, as of July 1st, those refunds have now been repealed. So we don't have to worry about that. But we still have timelines, but we don't have to refund the money. The third section is approvals, use it or lose it. Currently, the Act permits the approval authority to include a condition that approval of draft plans of subdivisions can lapse after a minimum of 3 years. Proposed new provisions permit an authorized person to also set time limits for site plan approvals. So the proposed provisions will now apply retroactively to draft plans of subdivision that were given approval on or before March 27th, 1995. Therefore, 3 years after the date that Bill 125 came into force, which was June 26, 2024, those draft plans of subdivision will lapse without the ability to extend. So in the city, we have Johnson Meadows, Phase 5. The original draft plan approval was received in 1993. However, there have been new draft plan conditions that were issued in 2022, so I'm assuming this would be okay. But we do have Vintage Homes located at the end of Dieuville Drive, and it received draft approval in 1990. So if it's not, if within 3 years they don't do anything, then they will lose their draft plan approval and they will have to start all over again. Westwood subdivision, which is off of Stewart Street and Forest Road, received draft approval on April 12th, 1995, but just squeaked by the March 25th date, so they would not fall into this category. So the fourth item is regulations to permit low-rise housing. Currently, the Act gives authority for municipalities, as you know, to make limited regulations regarding additional residential units. So we are allowed to have additional residential units in single, detached, semis, and townhouses. However, with the changes to the Planning Act, the minister will now be able to make regulations if exempting semi and singles and row housing from either zoning or site plan control if certain criteria are met. And the minister could also now make regulations setting out specific requirements and standards for additional dwelling units. No regulations have come forth at this time. Presently, additional residential units are not subject to a zoning bylaw amendment under Section 34 of the Act, nor are they subject to site plan agreements, and they have no appeal rights. The next section is appeals. So a previous bill eliminated third-party appeals. Third party was the neighbors or the residents in the area, so that they were no longer permitted to appeal minor variances and severances. These changes now associated with Bill 185 extends the prohibition on third-party appeals to zoning bylaws, zoning bylaw amendments, official plans, and official plan amendments. So only specified persons can appeal, and that includes the minister, agencies and public bodies, and the registered owner to which the land applies. So again, residents, neighbors will not be able to appeal. They'll be able to come to the public meetings, but not appeal. The removal of third-party appeals has been added to sections in the Planning Act as of July 1st. And the last category is exemption under the Planning Act. The minister, through Bill 185, has been given the power to make regulations that would exempt community service facilities, such as school boards, long-term care homes, and hospitals from all or part of the Planning Act. Now, no regulation has come forward at this time, but there may be some in the near future. So, with that being said, staff is recommending that the city's official plan be amended to remove the mandatory pre-consultation requirement that was added to the official plan, and that the newly amended Planning Act has the newly amended Planning Act has repealed that requirement for mandatory pre-application consultation. So bylaw will be brought forth to council at a future meeting.
Thank you. Are there questions of members of council? Councillor Keel, your worship.
Ron, did you want to go? No. You had your,
Go ahead, you're first.
okay. So I mean, obviously the pre-application consultation requirements, you know, something the province put in and is now reversing track on. There's not much we can do about that, but as you and I discussed, applicants that want a pre-application consultation can still voluntarily do it, and it's probably recommended that they do. And I think even though we're taking it out as a mandatory requirement, I would still suggest that council maybe direct you to still push it, I guess, if we will, as a recommendation. On the fee refund, I'm not really concerned about that flip-flop. I think that's one that I think municipalities were asking for before the old legislation even was implemented. The use it or lose it. So this is one of the things that I've taken a bit of issue with, because we have a number, as far as I know, of subdivisions in the city of Pembroke, which generally speaking, we don't have a lot of land. Like, the city of Pembroke doesn't have a lot of vacant land left. We're basically now down to pockets here and there around the city. So this one isn't one that bothers me. What actually bothers me is that it's actually rather restricted. So for example, Gulfview has been sitting there for over a decade, and I believe that there's some sort of $1 million pump station or something built out there, but not a single home. Are there other tools beyond this that we could use to start kicking some of these developers in the rear end? I mean, we know we need homes. We know many of the spots that I'm thinking, I mean, the La Pointe one behind the West End Mall is just getting started, I guess, last year, but was in fact approved, I think, in the 90s, if I'm not, so that's an example of, you know, a couple decades going by. Are there other tools and stuff that we could use, if not this new tool, which I like, but it seems to only apply to one of the examples? Are there other things that we could use?
Through you, Mr. Chairman.
Go ahead.
There is a section in the Planning Act that talks about deregistration of subdivisions if they're over 8 years old and there's been nothing happening. So there is something that we can do. Now, you know, that I can get a report together and list all of our subdivisions and the dates and things like that, and present that to committee at a later date.
I wouldn't mind such a
Sure.
report. Not necessarily something urgent, but I wouldn't mind such a report, because I think what this new provision, I think, is coming from is that there have been many examples where there's proposed subdivisions out there that are just sitting there. And I know I've seen in the media, especially down in Toronto or whatnot, where I guess there's some incentives from the province. I don't believe we qualified for that, but in some of the larger cities, their complaint was that they approved new subdivisions, like very recently, but yet nobody's then doing anything, and therefore they're not going to get the incentive. So I know this isn't just a problem for us. This, I'm sure, is a province-wide issue. And I think, yeah, the other three I didn't have any comments for, so I think that would be it. But I would like to see such a report, and I mean, the building of a subdivision isn't just, it's not just homes, it's economic activity, it's our tax base. I think we could be a bit more aggressive in pushing these things to get done, and I think it would benefit, frankly, the council's tax base, the city's economic development. It would be my position that I think we get a bit more aggressive on that front.
Thank you. Councillor Fernier, you have your hand up? Oh, sorry, your worship. Excuse me.
Yeah, I
His
did
worship was
I did
next.
not have my hand up.
Okay, well, in
That's
that case, I'll let the mayor speak. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair. So I'm not going to belabor it, because the points that Councillor Keel is raising is what I see. I know that the entire planning department of the city of Pembroke has always been very helpful, whether there's legislation or not, in terms of it's better to front load what it is that you're trying to do. And the same thing goes to the county of Renfrew. Pose what it is that you're trying to develop, how you're planning to do it, get the feedback in terms of what the issues potentially are, and be, you know, front load your issues, as opposed to getting the committee telling you what your issues are. The second point, again, without belaboring it, I'm hopeful that if developers see that the province is putting forward legislation like this, that this province is not afraid of moving forward that particular needle, in which case then if there are other developments that are lollygagging, that the province isn't afraid to push that particular needle and say, okay, these are the new time requirements, because you don't seem to be acting upon it. I am hopeful that at least one of those subdivisions that was mentioned will be moving forward. Having said that, Mr. Chair, if I can move that we proceed with the recommendation with the bylaw coming forward at a future council.
Moved by His Worship, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Further comments? I just have one from the Chair, if I may. The third-party appeals by residents, that doesn't seem like a good thing. It seems like big government pushing forward against the, the smaller voice within the municipalities. Is that a good thing, as your opinion as a planner? You sit on other boards, I understand, and what is the feeling of other areas across the province?
So through you, Mr. Chairman, I do sit on the Ontario Professional Planners Institute Board of Directors, and they very much were against this elimination of third-party appeals. They did write a letter on behalf of the provincial planners, indicating that this is something. You're lacking transparency, you're lacking the ability now for people to voice. They just don't feel like they want to come forward, because even if they do come forward, they don't even have an opportunity to go to the Ontario Land Tribunal now. So I feel it's like a step backwards, and it's unfortunate that that the government took this stand. I didn't think they would, but at this point anyway, we have to abide by their rules.
Yes, I'll just finish and then I'll go on. Seeing that is going to happen, there's no actual recourse to appeal to any specific type of board, such as you said, the rent tribunal boards. Will there be something set up for individuals to voice their opinion rather than just being shooed away? That's sort of my question. And,
Through you, Mr. Chairman, we're still going to have our 2 public meetings that we do for rezonings and official plan amendments. We have a planning advisory and adjustment committee meeting, and then a council meeting. And then we'll still have our public meetings, planning advisory meetings for minor variances and severances as well. So there will still be that opportunity for the person to come forward and express some concerns, and at that point maybe we can try and help mediate, like say if they wanted a fence or something, then maybe we would work with the developer and the homeowner to try and get that. But again, they just don't have that ultimate appeal right. The applicant does, but not the neighbors.
yeah, sad. Councillor Fernier, Councillor Keel?
Yeah, thank you, Colleen. Through the chair, I previously sat on the planning committee, and that mediation does take place, and it still does take place. And it's very rare that I saw anything going to an appeal. And I know many times the builder or the person that was modifying their property wanted to get along with their neighbors. So generally there was a fence put up, or there was something of that nature. So, that will still go on. And you're right, I was against this when it came out too, but I think that the process still can work for neighbors, so.
Okay, Councillor Keel?
Oh, I was just going to say, sorry, I agree wholeheartedly with Councillor Lafreniere, and the fact that we do encourage the pre-consultation meetings as well with the developer. We build that rapport and that bond with them, and then it's easier to work with and help the residents too. So I think that everything will work hand in hand, and we definitely encourage the pre-consultation meetings as well, so.
Thank you. Councillor Keel?
Yeah, on that note, I also know that there's a lot of, well, we're a political body, I'm going to say it, a political pushback, because now that neighbors and that can't appeal, they tend to then turn to the council to basically say, well, you need to be our voice, which is not, I mean, in terms of like the planning committee and stuff like that, I mean, really we're supposed to be sort of a neutral arbiter and doing the best job based on planning principles. But I know just from the prior round where it was severances and minor variances that it then kind of came back as blasts at the council because they couldn't do their own appeal in the appellate direction. So all that is to say that the pre-consultation and the working with the owner in that probably is actually more important under this concept, so that we can try and head off appeals at all, I guess. Not that we weren't already doing that, but just to say that it's probably even more important now.
Thank you. Further comments from council? Motions on the floor? Those in favor? Against? Carried unanimously. Thank you, Ms. Oriel. Next item. Amendment to parking bylaw, Patterson parking lot.
So during a recent review of the parking bylaw, it was noted that the bylaw prohibits overnight parking in the Patterson lot. This is incorrect, as this lot is a permit lot for which is used by many tenants in the downtown core. So many tenants don't have parking at their address, so they buy a permit from the city for this particular lot to accommodate their vehicle. So therefore, overnight parking is required for this lot. It was an oversight in the bylaw and just requires correction. So staff is recommending the amendment to the parking bylaw, and a bylaw will be prepared for a September 3rd council meeting.
Councillor Kale?
Simple oversight. I have nothing to add. I move that we recommend amending the parking bylaw to permit overnight parking in the Patterson lot.
Motion to amend, seconded by Councillor Fernier. Further questions or comments? Seeing none. Those in favor? Against? Again, carried unanimously. Thank you.
I can be excused.
Yep, sure thing. Good evening, Ms. Lochte. How are you this evening?
Good evening, everyone. Very well.
Welcome. You have some good news for us, or? I thought the treasurer always brought good news. Go ahead.
Okay, so tonight I have two reports on the agenda. The first one is the draft reserve and reserve fund policy. So the development of this policy is part of the city's strategic plan. I did attend a session with MFOA that provided training. So this policy does embody some of the best practices for reserve and reserve fund policies across Ontario in a way that makes the most sense for the municipality. So we don't have a reserve and reserve fund policy right now. So some new items I think to pay attention to as you review the policy for consideration. Some reserves have targets, target minimum balances. So this is something we might want to flesh out a little more as we develop our asset management plan and we develop our long-term financial plan to go along with it. So I haven't added too many minimum target balances, but there are some in there for review. I guess the second item is that I have changed in this draft policy, some policy in terms of which reserves earn interest. Currently, only the reserves we absolutely have to kind of allocate interest to have it. However, I think it makes sense for our capital reserves to have interest, be allocated every year into them just so they can keep better pace with inflation. So this would have a budgetary impact in that we're kind of moving some interest income that we use for operations and instead kind of designating some of it into our reserves instead. But to me, that makes sense. And as well, the policy does propose some priority setting in terms of any annual surplus funds to fill any reserves that fall short of the minimum balances. So those items are kind of itemized and I think are important to pay attention to as you read it. It is a fairly lengthy document because each reserve has a background, says what's allowed, like what are eligible contributions, what are eligible expenditures, who has authority to take money out of the reserve, and again, any minimum balances. But I do think it's a good document to help explain why we have the reserves we do, which is sometimes questions we get from the public. There are some cases with emergency funds that I'm suggesting that I be authorized to use the funds if we need to. So for example, we have an emergency fund. So if we declare an emergency, to me it'd be beneficial that I could just, if we need to spend money to buy sandbags, buy sand, that I would be allowed to do that without having to come to council meeting for that, because that's the intent of the reserve. So there are some authorities in there that are suggested, but generally speaking, it is council who has the authority over reserves. So at this point, I'm looking for feedback from everybody in September, and with your feedback, I will update it and provide another report to council in October, where we'd look to try to finalize the policy and pass it.
Thank you. Council obviously has seen all of the information in the package. Are there questions or direction or any inquiries at this time? September. Councillor Kale?
I've been trying to find it and I can't. Somewhere I think in here it said like for the, oh, I guess if I just say it, it'll pop up in front of me. Like prior to establishing a new reserve or reserve fund, a financial plan will be prepared. Does that allow us to be nimble enough during budget? For example, I'm just thinking of the Parks and Rec Reserve, which we literally, and I'm not going to say randomly, we purposefully did it, but we created it in the midst of budget deliberations last year. I think by and large, it's a good fund to have, but we certainly didn't, you know, I can't imagine you in the middle of budget sending you away to prepare me a financial plan when we suddenly think of a reserve that we would like. So I'm just wondering if that allows us to be nimble enough, or if there's, so that's number 4. Sorry, Madam Treasurer. Like the first sentence in number 4. So that was my only question on that. I certainly like the idea of the interest being reallocated. And that led me to think of the second question, which is, I believe, using again the Parks and Rec Reserve, that we allocated the same amount in this budget as we did in the last budget. And should we be, obviously with budget constraints, there's only so much money, but should we be attempting to increase them annually by inflation or by some amount? Like, would it be more prudent to increase the amount that we put into a reserve year after year than to keep it the same as the year prior? But again, that, you know, I realize the money in budget has to come from somewhere, but I'm hoping that we're going to be a bit more prudent with our reserves and increasing reserves into the future. And yeah, that was it.
So through the chair. So I guess financial plan, probably could change the wording of that. So to me, we would just need to, if we're going to create a reserve, kind of define, as we have like in the annex, kind of define the different categories of what are the revenue sources going to be, what are the eligible expenditures, are we going to have a target, and what's the authority? And so that if we are going to be able to create things on the fly, at least there's very clear direction about the purpose of the reserve. So I can certainly clarify that a little bit better in the policy, so I'll make a note of that.
Thank you, because that would make sense when we were, I mean, I guess we did establish that reserve technically without any definition or anything. But yes, I see your point that when we do it, we should have at least certain parameters as part of the establishment.
So I guess in terms of the second comment, by allocating interest to capital reserves, at least the amount that's in there will keep pace with inflation. But certainly in terms of the council approved target levels, in the draft report as it stands right now, there are only a few reserves that have a minimum balance, but we may want to look at some to say, you know, we want to contribute over the next 5 years a minimum of $50,000 to get to, you know, in year 2027 having $1 million in this account, as an example. And so I certainly see that we would definitely, as part of our asset management planning, probably want to set some goals like that. And obviously there may be other, you know, ideas that members of council have that we can add into this document as well.
Very good. Further questions? Ms. Locke, do you admit, oh, sorry, go ahead, Councillor Purcell.
Yeah, just a quick question in regards to the, I guess the interest and in terms of how is it indicated in terms of the interest? Like, so one of the ones that I'm looking at is like in terms of like fire equipment. So why would fire equipment not have that interest component when other funds have? I'm just curious to see how that works.
So through the chair, the fleet, like the vehicles and equipment, reserve contributions work a little bit differently because what we do is, behind the scenes is we do some math when we prepare the budget. So we'll go ahead and we'll update all of the replacement values for all of the equipment every year.
Okay.
In behind the scenes, and then we'll take whatever that number is divided by the useful life, and then we'll put in the budget, okay, this year, to be able to replace the equipment, we need $55,000 a year instead of 50. So we, behind the scenes, do that when we calculate how much we need to contribute.
Perfect, appreciate that, thank you.
Further questions? I have one from the chair. You'd mentioned the emergency authorization for, depending on what has happened, to give you the authority to purchase or whatever. Is that not in place now under the Ontario Emergency Management Act, where certain individuals within the core structure have the authority to do that? Perhaps Ms. Soriel, would you be more familiar with that? Who signs? Usually what's the org chart in an emergency? The mayor? CAO? Go ahead. It has to be delegated. It has to, and we don't have one currently.
So we do have, under the procurement bylaw, some parameters for emergency purchases, but it's silent on where the money comes from. So in this case, because we're establishing an emergency reserve, all this policy would say is, depending on the dollar amount of the item, it might be the CAO or the mayor that needs to approve it, but the money would come from that reserve.
You were looking to have the signing authority as well? Is that what I heard? No? Okay,
No,
I
so it
misunderstood.
would just be to take the money out of the
Okay,
reserve
very
to
good,
pay
very
for
good.
any emergency expenses
I
that
misconstrued
happen.
that. Okay, very good, thank you. Further questions? So I guess just direction to come back with some in September and brush that up a little bit and some fine tuning. Thank you. Next item, the draft reserve and reserve fund policy. Oh, sorry, unaudited 2023 financial results. Ms. Lochte?
So each year I present the city's unaudited financial results using the cash basis of reporting to discuss the accumulated surplus for the year in the general fund and to seek direction from council on how to allocate any surplus funds that are available. So currently, we're projecting a surplus in the general fund of roughly $1,129,209. Of this amount, $736,223 is related to interest income, which was unexpected. So in the budget for 2023, we did expect interest rates to drop, which they never did. And I think they even went up a little. So we did have quite a significant amount of extra revenues due to that. So without this unexpected additional revenue, our adjusted surplus for the year is $392,986. The water fund itself had a small deficit, which is primarily due to the high cost of chemicals and a year-end inventory adjustment that we did, and we do cover these deficits through their reserves. So if they have a surplus or a deficit, the plus and the minus go into their reserves. The sewer fund did have a surplus in the amount of $155,000. So again, this will be transferred to the joint sanitary sewer reserve fund as required. In terms of the general fund, I am looking for direction on how to allocate these funds. Now, it's possible this amount may change a little bit through the audit. They can sometimes find some small adjustments that need to be made. But as it stands now, I have made a proposal which is based similar to what was decided on last year in terms of how to allocate the surplus. So I am proposing that we make another transfer to the emergency and disaster recovery reserve. So we did say last year that we wanted to kind of split that up and do that over a few years. So proposing to allocate $200,000 to that reserve, which would bring it up to $450,000. Our target in terms of the municipal disaster recovery fund is to have a balance of about $700,000. So it'll still take us another year or two to get there, but we're well on our way with an allocation of that size. Proposing to transfer $250,000 to the aquatic center reserve to cover future project costs, $50,000 into the Parks and Rec building reserve, 150 to the transit reserve, similar to last year, with the balance going to the general capital reserve.
What is the wish of council? Deputy Mayor, you had a comment?
Well, I'll make a motion and I'll speak to it after somebody seconds it. That we accept the proposal from the treasurer for the transfers.
Motion made by the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Keel. Comments, Deputy Mayor?
Well, this is similar to last year. Thank you for bringing this proposal forward. Our priorities, Aquatic Center Reserve is getting funding. Transit, which we have the Transit Committee. We also have a P3 Sportsplex Committee that has been formed. So projects that we're working on in progress, and of course the disaster recovery is very important. And also the General Capital Reserve, we've seen the last couple of years since COVID, all the overages in all these projects. So we have to take money from the General Capital Reserve. So that'll be up to close to 2 million. It's always good to have a healthy General Capital Reserve. So I make the motion to accept this proposal.
Moved and seconded. Further comment? Councillor Keel?
The one question I do have about the General Capital Reserve to Madam Treasurer is there, I mean, anything can always happen. As the Deputy Mayor said, this is the one we usually grab out of. Is there an amount that you're looking for in the General Capital Reserve that we think would be healthy? Because I think a lot of people, I know there's a lot of people out there that and I only say this because I got hit with it at Buskerfest this weekend. But the question was, we have reserves and reserves and reserves and reserves and reserves, which were kind of just highlighted by your last report. So I wonder if you could speak to the importance of these reserves. I realize I'm putting you on the spot, and I actually realize now I meant to give you a heads up about this question. So I do apologize for that, but I'm hoping your explanation will be a lot better than what I gave on the street downtown this weekend.
No problem. So we have reserves for a number of different reasons. Sometimes they are to meet legislative or contractual requirements. So the city may receive funding for a specific purpose and it cannot be used for any other purpose. So we have to squirrel that away until such time as we have the appropriate expenditures to apply it to. We do need to have some to ensure adequate cash flow for the city. We do need to make sure that we can manage our long-term infrastructure. So with infrastructure, we may not need to make an investment for a number of years, but when it comes time to make improvements, it can cost in the tens to hundreds of millions of dollars. So in order for those kind of improvements to be affordable, we have to save towards replacement every year. We do have to have the ability to address financial risks because we can't turn around tomorrow and issue another tax bill to people. We have one shot every year to bill people, and unexpected things happen, and we have to make sure we still have funding to be able to manage through those unexpected occurrences. And then we also look to try to smooth expenditures again to make sure that our tax rate increases are as small as possible and stable over time, because again, large increases, a lot of small increases and then, 2 or 3 very large ones are very hard on, the taxpayer's pocketbook, and we want to try to avoid that as much as possible. And then in the case of the General Capital Reserve, it's a combination of two, so it's there to take advantage of opportunities. A lot of grants from higher levels of government in the province and the federal government require the city to come up with at least usually 25 to 33% funding for projects. So we might, through grants, be able to bring forward projects we weren't planning to do, but then we also don't have the 25 to 33% funding that we need to make the project happen. So we do look to the general capital as a source of funding for that percentage contribution that we would have to make in order for the project to move forward. And the other item is, as we see sometimes, and I know we have a report coming up tonight, which is an example, budgets are estimates, and we don't actually know the cost of things until we tender it out and we receive bids. And sometimes we haven't budgeted enough, and so we need a source of contingency funds to, again, make sure that the projects we want to achieve this year, we can move forward with and have a bit of extra money to make that happen. So the general capital works a bit as an opportunities fund and a bit as a contingency fund if we haven't budgeted enough for a certain project. In my draft policy, I have put that we'd want to see a minimum of 1.5 million in that reserve. So again, would be looking for council feedback on that.
Councillor Purcell?
Madam Treasurer, just in regards to the proposed transfer to Parks and Rec Building Reserve, I'd like to see that increase, and the reason why I'd like to see that increase, I'm sure you can all remember whenever you presented the asset management plan, and the asset management really wasn't favorable in terms of Parks and Rec buildings, and $50,000 doesn't seem to be adequate to address some of those concerns. So I'm just wondering if we could up that to $100,000 and take the $50,000 away from even the general capital reserve, just reduce it by 50,000. And I'm sure the asset management plan, if you look at it, you can see that Parks and Rec has been really, really hit hard in terms of maybe just years in terms of not really funding those
Is this to be
facilities.
included as part of the motion?
I'm making the
amendment?
recommendation that we adjust the
Amendment?
motion.
You're going to amend the motion?
Amend the motion, so that way we would increase the transfer to Parks and Rec Rebuilding Reserve to $100,000, which will change the balance in terms of the transfer to general capital reserves to $429,209.
Moved by Councillor Purcell, seconded by Councillor Keel, to accept and to increase the amount from $50,000 to $100,000 for recreation. Are there any comments or questions on the amendment? Deputy Mayor?
I'll support the amendment. I agree with, that's good.
Those in favor of the amendment? Carried. Before we pass the motion, and I call the question, forget what I was going to say. Anyway, that's okay, it'll come to me later. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. While you're thinking about that, just to point out in terms of the question about the general capital reserve, so just as the Parks and Recreation Building Reserve didn't once upon a time exist, the general capital reserve didn't exist, and I believe it was, and don't hold me to this, but I think it was in my first term, so somewhere between 2010 and 2014, that never existed. It was created, there was surpluses, and what would seemingly happen is we would have excess funds from a given year, and there was always a need. As you all know, there's always a need, and so it's like, well, let's use it for this, let's use it for that, as opposed to sticking it in a general capital reserve. So that's when the genesis of that happened, is there was a need. This is a place we can park funds, and we all know, as was commented by several different individuals, is that you budget for certain projects, and if it goes over, at least there was some funds to rely upon, and not scratch your head and try to figure out, well, where are you going to come up with the funds? So I just put that in there in terms of some context as to where that came from, and so it's always helpful to have that general capital reserve to rely upon.
Thank you. My epiphany returned to me. I talked to another member of a council within the Renfrew County region, and they faced a 17% tax hike. And due to the, not having the due diligence to establish qualified reserves for the future, everything went along great. They operated on that budget. Everything was fine. Suddenly, they were faced with a large infrastructure problem, that they had to build a large infrastructure unit, and now they're hit with 17%. So I believe that the due diligence is being expounded upon here tonight. People don't like a tax increase, but I mean, if we just toddled along and went along with no tax increase and suddenly, presented the taxpayer with a 17 to 20% tax increase, unheard of. So bittersweet as it is, we continue to function, and I think we're going to move ahead. Motion to accept the motion, the original motion. Those in favor? Against, carried. Thank you, Madam Treasurer. Mr. Lewis, good evening. We're discussing an all-terrain vehicle bylaw 2023-43 amendment this evening.
Thank you. The Operations Department recommends changes to Schedule A of the bylaw 2023-43. That's a bylaw to regulate and govern the operation of all-terrain, multipurpose, and recreation off-road vehicles within the city of Pembroke, and it's to revise the permitted route of travel. So at last month's combined committee meeting, approval was granted to use a section of Angus Campbell Drive from Pembroke Street East to access the parking lot at the Pembroke Mall. Additionally, the prescribed route to the South End city businesses was extended for a trial period, including that new section on Angus Campbell Drive, until November 30th of 2025. That's option 1 of the Schedule A that's included in your packages. Committee also inquired at that time about the use of Algonquin Trail to access the parking lots and the amenities at the Pembroke waterfront. So option 2 that's included in the package is a revision to Schedule A. It includes accessing the Marina parking lot via Albert Street, using Albert Street, First Responders Way, and Alexander Street to access the playground parking lot and the Cockburn parking lot at the amphitheater. Option 3 of the revised Schedule A that's included in your packages includes the additions already mentioned, and it changes the street access in the westerly portion of the city from Lee Street to Douglas via Boundary Road West, and that's to access the fuel station at 1106 Pembroke Street West. It also changes to use Bronx Street to George to provide safe crossing at the traffic signals at Pembroke Street West, and that's to access Riverside Park. The Douglas, Bronx, and George Street route that I mentioned replaces the Lee Street route from Forest Road that was previously included in the bylaw. To date, the Operations Department has not received any complaints related to the use of ORVs on our designated routes. And if approved by committee, the appropriate amendment to bylaw 2023-43 will be brought to council in September. So committee's preferred option for the amendment is requested to complete the bylaw. And I believe there was some maps and the details of the streets that are being used were included in the committee package. As far as financial implications, there are no immediate financial implications. The RCA TV Club is working with staff on route signage as well as updating the information on their website. And there is wayfinding signage showing access to various amenities along Algonquin Trail as well as along the access routes I just discussed. That's being completed by the Economic Development, Culture, and Tourism Department under a separate program. Strategic plan impact, economic development and growth is a strategic plan impact of this report, creating access for trail users to support local businesses, promotes the use of city parks, and further supports partnerships. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Questions, Councillor Keel, Deputy Mayor?
I have 2 tracks. I think they're both fairly short, though. Number 1, are we notifying residents on any of the proposed routes before we change them?
We will be notifying residents on the routes, yes.
And number 2, I'm concerned about making sure that residents are aware of what we're discussing. But number 2, as much as I love seeing all of the fabulous, wonderful staff here at the City of Pembroke, if we're really not receiving any complaints, and a lot of this to me, like when you're looking at these routes, you're looking at safe crossing, like you're looking at things that you in the operations department have far more specialty in than I do. Can we possibly delegate you to just do this instead of coming back to council twice a year to reroute all these things? Unless other councillors are enjoying this, I'd be perfectly happy if we delegated to your department to reroute these things, because I don't personally see this as being necessary. And then if residents want to complain or whatnot, they can make their complaints known. But if we've been doing this for as long as we have and really not seeing that many complaints, I'm just wondering why we need to look at this constantly. I could be wrong, other councillors could have thoughts, but I don't get anybody commenting to me on these things, and I think this is like the 4th time we've done this since I've been elected to council. and we usually defer to your expertise in the safety stuff and whatnot anyway.
Councillor Fernier, and then Deputy Mayor, and then Councillor Purcell, do you have your hand up? Very good.
So I hear what Councillor Keel is saying, and I tend to agree. My only concern would be his first point, and that is notifying the neighbors when there's change. So if it's a change and it's going to affect neighbors on a new street, they should be notified before it starts. So if there are any major concerns, but I would trust that Mr. Lewis is very familiar with this. And as you said, our staff would investigate those intersections, make sure that they're appropriate and that type of thing. And as long as the neighbors are notified, I would be confident. Because unless I live on this street, I don't really know, you know. And my only aside point from all of this discussion is that I think the more we see ATVs on our streets, the more we're going to see them on streets they shouldn't be at, as we discussed, as we mentioned at a meeting previously. You know, individuals are going to get confused, but that's the way it's going to be. I mean, they may see one on one street and say, hey, you know, you can drive an ATV through town now because I saw one on this street, not being aware that that is an authorized route. But anyway, that being said, that's just the nature of this issue. So I would agree with Councillor Keel that, you know, he works with the ATV club, and he knows the trails that will work. So.
Deputy Mayor, Councillor Purcell.
Thank you. Well, in regards to what Councillor Keel was suggesting, I don't have an issue with that, as long as it comes forward as an info item at a regular scheduled council meeting. So I just want to comment. My wife and I do quite a bit of biking as other residents who go up and down the trail. Meet quite a few ATVs, and from Rankin to the waterfront, every ATV I've met has been going the speed limit and waving and respecting the community zone, which is good to see. So I'm going to motion that we accept the recommendations to the changes for the proposed options.
Moved by the Deputy Mayor that we accept the changes as proposed, seconded by Councillor Purcell. Comments, Councillor Purcell.
Yeah, just a couple comments. I like the idea in terms of notification to the neighbors, as well as, I guess my question is how do the routes get updated in terms of the on-ATV map system? So an example would be Bennett Street closure. There was no rerouting, so there was a period of time where individuals couldn't get to a gas station in the East End, where Bennett Street was closed because that was the modified route down Town Line to Bennett up to the fire hall across to get to the gas station there, and also the hotel. There's rerouting traffic, but then do we have also put in consideration in terms of rerouting the ATV traffic, or is that, I don't know how that works, because it was closed in the ATV Ontario, but no additional route to take you to that area.
Okay.
Go ahead.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I wasn't aware that it was closed on the quad-on maps. We had discussions when Bennett Street was under construction, and when Bennett Street was closed, we had discussions with the clubs.
Okay.
That we were not rerouting the traffic. The ATVs are more than capable of driving through a granular road a bit easier than a car can. So we were still making provisions for the ATV traffic to use Bennett Street.
Okay.
And that was discussed with the club. They may have used Municipal 511 that shows road closures and just automatically place that road closure on their quad-on app, which is unfortunate, but we did have discussions with them. If we needed to make any changes, we were going to give them an alternate route. We had discussed an alternate route being Paul Martin Drive, but we didn't need to actually put it in place.
Okay.
But we do discuss those items with the clubs on a regular basis.
The only reason is that I think I traveled to go to the gas station, and then I recognized when I was on the Quad On app that it's closed. So I was like, oh, I shouldn't be here. And then I guess the other thing is in terms of, I prefer the option 3 is the option that I would prefer. Thank you.
If I may, from the chair, we understand your total intelligence and ability to to work very hard without council being aware of things, but I think from a position of transparency, it's nice to have you here, not only to inform the the residents in the area, but the whole city that something's happening, rather than you going ahead, council sort of maybe aware of it, maybe not aware of it. So personally, I like you being here. I'm sorry, Your Worship, you had a comment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and it sort of builds upon what Councillor Purcell is asking. So obviously, Council knows that the Chair and Vice Chair meets with Mr. Lewis, and I'm just wondering, without getting into a whole lot of detail, but if you can comment upon how the public is aware of where they're supposed to be going, signage, the interaction with the group, and then lastly, that you're looking for direction in terms of which option.
Through you, Mr. Chair. So we do discuss all the routes with the clubs. A lot of the times, the route changes are requests from the clubs. Other times, it's operations staff looking at the route and saying, okay, Lee Street, a lot of traffic on Lee Street. There's some tighter areas. It may not be the most appropriate place. If we can get them off the trail, in this case, Douglas Street, get them directly to the gas station, it works a whole lot better. So we work with the club on that type of stuff. And then we work with the club with route signage. So route signage will be put along the route so that someone on an off-road vehicle can actually follow the signs and know where they're supposed to go. In those areas where we definitely don't want ATV traffic or there's significant issues that could arise, then we'll put signage that says no ATV traffic is allowed. So we do those type of things on a regular basis. It's the same thing with traffic control in general. The operations department deals with traffic control, stop signs, various regulatory signs, all that kind of stuff on a regular basis. So what I will do, if it's the motion put forward, we will advertise option 3 and the new schedule changes. That bylaw will be put together. I will include in that bylaw the delegated authority so that we can move forward in the future without having to come back all the time. And then we'll advertise regularly on our social media to ensure that the various groups and the various users understand what the changes are that are being made.
So there is a motion on the floor. Does that answer your question, Your Worship? So we'll call the motion with the caveat, I guess, that you will, based on the questions that were posed to you, make some rectification and bring it back to us, right?
Yes, sir.
Everyone
that'll
okay
come in
with that?
bylaw.
Those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Anything else you wanted to add, Mr. Lewis, before we bid you adieu?
I have one more item on the agenda.
I'm so
I
glad you're
could.
still here. Go ahead.
So we'll move into the Isabella Street Catchment Area 1 item. The Operations Department recommends the following. Committee approve award for the Isabella Street Catchment Area Number 1, Moffett Street between Pembroke Street West and Renfrew Street. That's contract number 23654-1 to Bonashare Excavating, Inc. in the amount of $1,814,124.08 plus HST, that being the lowest responsive and responsible bidder. Committee approve additional expenditures in the amount of $75,000 for a contingency allowance. The total value of the recommendations equal $1,889,124.08 plus applicable HST. The department also recommends that the budget shortfall of $506,162.87 be funded from reallocated and surplus funds, and I'll detail those later in the report. The contract was publicly advertised and tendered. We received 3 bids. Tenders were opened on August 1st. They were reviewed, analyzed, and evaluated, meeting all the requirements of the city's procurement policy. Bids were received as follows. Bonashare Excavating, Inc. at $1,814,124.08. Do All Construction, $2,190,658.58. And McCrae Excavating Limited at $2,340,000 even. The bid bond submitted by McCrae Excavating did not meet the tender document requirements. That resulted in the bid being deemed non-compliant. So the bids did exceed the allocated budget. Staff and the consultant reviewed the priority of the project, the scope of the project, and did a risk analysis of not completing the project. The existing infrastructure, that being the water, sanitary, and storm, are beyond their useful life. The storm sewer has experienced multiple failures. The project is deemed a very high priority. Excuse me. Additionally, as committee is aware, this is phase one of a multi-phase project for infrastructure renewal in the Isabella catchment area. If approved, preliminary works will begin August 26th, with construction taking place September 9th through November 1st. As part of the 2024 capital budget, a budget of $1,506,800 was identified for this project. Project costs as tendered, that includes the design, contract administration, construction, additional expenditures, and the net HST total $2,012,962.87. This represents the budget shortfall I mentioned of $506,162.87, and it can be funded using reallocated and surplus funds, including a surplus from Carmody Street Water Main Project of $100,000, reallocate the water distribution pressure zones funds that were scheduled for 2024 of $150,000, reallocate some funds from the Crandall Street Lift Station project of $55,000, and we have a surplus from the Bell Street Reconstruction Project of $215,000. The recommendations in this report do include the award of contract administration services to Ainley Group on the quoted values submitted in their design and contract administration proposal, and the strategic plan impact is the city's vision of maintaining infrastructure in good condition with no major failures and the need to ensure capacity. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
What is the wish of council? Councillor Plummer.
Thank you, Chair. Mr. Lewis made some good points, how we need to proceed with this project, as is the first project in the catchment area. And he's also outlined some areas where we're basically using up leftover monies or reallocating funds. So we're not always rating our reserves, but just doing this in the reallocation. So I would move that we approve award to BEI excavating for the amount of $1,814,124 plus the additional contingency allowance for the total project tendering of, I think it's $2,012,962.87.
Deputy Mayor? Seconded by the Deputy Mayor. You've heard the motion. Is there any questions? Or Councillor Kale?
So I think at some point in time in the past, I believe the PBIA was here looking at doing a project with the Shamrock Park and at the same time as this. Is that still the expected way of proceeding? I don't know for sure if they've gotten their grant or whatnot that they were looking for, but I know I think we were hoping to get electricity in the park and some other things like that. Are you able to speak to that tonight?
Through the chair, the PBIA was successful in that grant application. The Shamrock Park project is going forward. Included in this particular project is the hydro required to bring electricity to the park. There's also some communications that we're planning for the future. There are some of items there. We are reworking the project to finalize the details of the project now that we've got confirmation. And there may be a small amount that we may require out of the general capital reserves that was approved at that previous report, just because we don't want to hammer on these reserves on these reallocations too hard. So we are working with the PBIA on that project to ensure it gets successful.
Well, that's fantastic news. Thank you so much for that.
Further questions or comments? Councillor Purcell?
My only question is in regards to the $500,000 shortfall. That's, I guess, my concern. So in terms of the preliminary estimates, it's a $500,000 shortfall, and how much of those dollars are attributed to, I don't know, bringing hydro in? I wouldn't be $500,000, but in terms of cost associated with the Shamrock Park, and I think I just kind of go back with what Madam Treasurer had said, that, it seems like when we get, when we do estimates, we tend to underestimate the dollar value. We thought it was, COVID pricing, we thought it was going to stop, we thought, okay, there's procurement issues, those kinds of things that increase those costs. Maybe if you can just comment in terms of, how we're going to get a little bit more accurate in terms of the costing for projects, and I know it's difficult. Believe me, I know it's difficult. But I think it just makes it very difficult for us to budget when we don't have a good, accurate baseline in terms of some of the costs. And I think every bid that's come forward to this council has been typically over the estimate. I don't even know one that was under, at least in my term of council.
Any opinions on that one, Mr. Lewis?
Yeah, I'll answer as best I can. Let me rephrase that. We are under budget on a number of projects. 2 of the projects have surplus funds that are helping to pay for this. One of the reasons why the operations department has gone to a catchment area type methodology in our projects is to try and help this along. If we hire a consultant to do a design project on 5 or 6 phases of a project, like we are with the Isabella Catchment Street area, the River Road water main catchment area, the Nelson Street project, we get the opportunity to design in advance of tendering. The unfortunate thing is phase 1 is always being designed after we've set project budget. There hasn't been any survey, there hasn't been any due diligence, there hasn't been any investigations done. No soils reports have been completed, no design on road structure or anything of that nature. So that initial phase 1 design is over and above what we had anticipated being needed in some cases. There are times when we find things under the ground, when we do soils investigations that we didn't anticipate were there. Now we have to design for that, it increases the cost. But we couldn't do a soils investigation in advance of determining budget because the project doesn't exist. We need a budget figure before the project can exist. Per our procurement policy, we just have to work through that. So unfortunately, phase 1 sometimes go that way. We do, to the best of our ability, take projects from previous years. We have a record of all costs and all tendered values of previous years. I'm going to go back a decade, and we take those numbers and we try and utilize those numbers to estimate for future projects. Unfortunately, sometimes the items aren't exactly the same because the design's not complete. When you get the final design, get it out to the contractors, we end up sometimes in these situations. Did I answer all your questions, or is there something further?
Your Worship,
I understand.
did you have a question?
Part comment, part question. Mr. Lewis, I know that as council, we receive reports, and I'll say staff, because I can't recall if it's out of your department or the Treasury Department, as to contracts that are awarded. And I'm trying to recall if it's already, we're just getting it as an information item because it's below budget, or if it's because of the procurement policy and it's below a certain dollar amount. But there are some that the reason why we don't debate it or talk about it or whatever is because it's below, if I'm not mistaken. But that's what I'm trying to figure out.
Through the chair.
Go ahead.
We receive a monthly, I believe it's a monthly report from the Deputy Treasurer, Manager of Purchasing, and that provides a list of all procurements that have happened within that month, whether it was over, under, and regardless of budget. It basically provides them all. A lot of the items that meet the authority within the procurement policy doesn't necessarily come here in front of committee. They are listed there. And off the top of my head, I can't rhyme any off, but that's not because they're not there. It's just because off the top of my head, I can't remember them. But there could be significant amount of those that were well under budget. We just don't bring those under budget projects to council because they meet the policy and we move forward and get those projects done. It's when we run into a situation like this where we're over budget, that the policy demands we come to council and get approval.
Thank you. Further questions? Councillor Frenier?
Yes, through the chair, it was indicated that the downtown was successful in receiving a grant for that little parkette. Is that money going to be turned over to the city?
I can't
Are we
answer
on
that.
another topic, or?
No, you just,
Sorry.
Councillor Keel indicated, or somebody did, that the downtown had applied for a grant to cover lighting at the little parkette, I believe, Shamrock Park.
It's not on the agenda.
It was mentioned during this meeting.
I know, but it's not on the agenda for
It's
discussion.
I'm asking,
done
it's
in conjunction
pertinent.
with this.
Okay, very good. Go
It
ahead.
is
Yeah.
pertinent to this
I just
budget.
don't want to go off track. Go
It's
ahead.
included in this scope, I believe. So is that money going to go towards this?
Through you, Mr. Chair, not the entire project. The
Okay.
upgrade of the Shamrock Park is part of this. There's bits and pieces of the upgrades to the park that's included in this. The grant application and the grant funding that's provided is basically for surface works, not underground works. So any of the underground works to bring that hydro in, communications and stuff like that, we always knew was going to be part of the city's requirements and not part of the
Okay.
PBIA's upgrades.
Okay, thank you.
No further comments. I'll call the question. The proposal to accept BEI as the main bidder in the amount of $1,814,124.08 for the Isabella Street catchment area number 1, tender contract number 236541-1, be accepted, and the offset costs taken from surpluses from other projects, therefore not drawing on the reserves. Those in favor? Against? Carried. Thank you. Else you'd like to tell us before you leave? No? Thank you. Have a good night. Good evening, Ms. Charbonneau. I believe you're going to give us an update on the Golden Helmets Road closure, September 21st, 2024.
Thank you, Chair. Good evening. I'm here to present a report as stated on the Golden Helmet Street closure request for September 21st, 2024. On Saturday, September 21st, the Golden Helmets Precision Motorcycle Team will perform in Pembroke. The performance will include about 20 officers demonstrating a series of complex motorbike demonstrations. And as part of this, we are requesting that a portion of the downtown corridor be closed from Victoria Street to Agnes Street, and for reference sake, that's roughly from Royal Bank down to Giant Tiger. So the show will start at 2 p.m. and run till the show will start at 2 p.m. It isn't that long, and in order to ensure that the road is clear, we will require the road closure, and with that comes some costs. And among staff doing research, the costs will include the provision of barricades, staff time to clear the roads, so on and so forth, with a cost estimated at up to $2,500. So the OPP, as part of the demonstration, have also required the use of a nearby paved parking lot in order to do some staging and practicing. Upon speaking with staff, it has been allocated that the PMC overflow parking lot would be the best location option. And this supports the strategic plan impact of a vibrant and thriving downtown and underlying principle of economic development and growth, as the event is expected to bring forth a lot of visitors and spectators. They are a well-known demonstration group, and Pembroke is lucky to have the group join us on September 21st. And a caveat to that is we are also hosting the Association of Police Service Boards Zone 2 meeting at the Best Western on September 19th and 20th. And this show will serve as an exciting conclusion and engaging community event to draw people to our downtown. If there's any questions, I'd be happy to answer.
Your Worship, Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Not necessarily a question. I do want to thank staff for your report, and I know that Ms. Sorio was involved in this. There's a number of different staff members involved because There was a certain width of the street that's required in order for them to do their particular event. But if we can take a step back, because I know on the weekend at the Busker Fest, someone was asking me about the golden helmets, and because I had brought it up because they were saying what a great event it was, and I said, we got other events coming up, and this was one of them. And they said, forgive me, but never heard of it before. So I made some notes here because I imagine some people have not heard of them before because I don't think they've ever been to Pembroke before. The Golden Helmets is an elite precision motorcycle team that does various maneuvers. They are members of the OPP. So there's members of the OPP that are part of this Golden Helmets team. They're uniformed officers. They are celebrating their 61st year this year. They go to various different communities. Usually you have to invite, beg, and plead to get them to come to your community. Pembroke is one of only 2 locations in 2024 that they are coming. The Golden Helmet team members are officers who successfully complete various courses and a season of demonstrating that they have superior riding skills in respect to motorcycle operation. I can indicate that the inspector told our Police Services Board, to which Councillor Lafreniere and I sit upon, that, as I said, that this is only one of 2 events that are happening in Ontario this particular year. As I've said at the beginning, I don't think that they've ever been to Pembroke. Similarly, the OAPSB that Ms. Charbonneau references, I don't think it's ever been hosted in Pembroke. So we have people coming from all over Ontario that sit upon police services boards that are coming to this particular board meeting over a number of different days. And part of our job, mission, so forth, is to get them to circulate in the evening hours and so forth throughout the city of Pembroke, see what we have to offer, and try to encourage them and their families and so forth to come back to our community at a future date and to talk about the city of Pembroke. So there's an ulterior motive to some of these conferences that we've been promoting. In any event, I understand, as I said, that Ms. Sorial was tasked to try and determine widths of streets and so forth because they do need a certain minimum width. I know that, as I said before, that the inspector's been in consultation with Mr. Saint-Jean, who is another board member, as well. It is my understanding that I missed what I was going to say, but there's a number of different people that have been involved in trying to bring this forward to have them come here. Oh, that's what it was. Is that my understanding is also the PBIA was consulted and is supportive of this particular event. So a lot has gone into this, but and the funding coming from the Police Services Board budget. So what's coming forward to this council is the 2 recommendations. And so at this time, if I could move that the road closure of Victoria Street to Agnes Street on September 21st from 1 to 4, as well as exclusive use of the PMC overflow parking lot for the Golden Helmets for the purpose of staging and practicing for the public performance, September 21st from 12 till 2.
Moved by the mayor, seconded by the deputy mayor. Further discussion? Deputy Mayor and then Councillor Keel.
I see where they were in Pakenham last year in September, and they received quite the appreciation from the residents. The downtown was packed. Anytime we can, that we're fortunate to get groups like this to come, and if we have to close the street for a few hours, it's well worth it. It puts Pembroke on the map. It brings in tourists. People get talking about it. It's enjoyment of the residents and the surrounding community and everyone. So it's a specialized group, and I want to commend everyone involved who is responsible, Police Services Board and everyone for bringing this group to Pembroke. I think it's fantastic. So gladly second the motion to close the road and have the overflow lot. Thank you.
Councillor Keel, Councillor Lafreniere, you have your hand up.
So generally speaking, I certainly support this event, and I believe it's going on in theory now the same day as Ribfest. But that also leads me to another question as to whether Victoria and Agnes are the appropriate closure streets. If you're coming down Pembroke Street and then you're forced to go down Victoria, presumably to Lake to go around this event, there's no lights at that section. And Agnes does the same thing. You presumably turn left down Agnes and there's no lights to help you out. And if we're having increased traffic on Lake Street because of Ribfest, I'm just wondering, are we going to be holding up, like going down Victoria to try and turn left onto Lake could be difficult if there's a lot of traffic going through. So my only question is, like, should we be doing Albert to Frank Niber instead of Victoria to Agnes? But I don't know about the street widths and stuff. I'm just worried we're funneling traffic down to Lake without street lights to actually let them flow through. I don't know, maybe Mr. Lewis stuck around. I don't know if he has any thoughts on that either, but that's my only concern, Your Worship. Otherwise, I fully support the event.
Mr. Lewis, would you comment on the question?
Thank you. Yeah, I can. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Using Agnes Street is a non-issue. Traffic heading east on Pembroke Street makes a left-hand turn on Agnes Street and theoretically would be making a right-hand turn onto Lake Street, so I don't anticipate there's issues there. The road closure through Pembroke Street that encompasses the bridge is extremely difficult, and using Albert Street, which is much narrower than Victoria Street, it can also be difficult to deal with. So it would be the preference of the operations department that the closure be Victoria Street to Agnes Street. It's something we've done in the past, and we have been able to make it work fairly well.
Thank you. Councillor Keel, you satisfied with that?
Concerned, but satisfied.
Thank you. Councillor Lafreniere?
I was just going to reiterate what Councillor Keel said about the fact the Ribfest is taking place that weekend. And again, we have another busy weekend coming up in downtown. And if you read in your agendas, I guess there's another event taking place also, a community walk down at the waterfront. I guess at the amphitheater there's going to be something. So something for everyone, I'm sure, downtown.
Your Worship?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So certainly, I think that a number of different events builds upon itself. I know on the weekend we had the Kids and Cops fishing, the regular fishing derby, as well as Busker Fest. But I'm just, maybe I'm missing this. So when I go to the Ribfest, it says September 27th through the 29th, but this is the 21st. So I don't know. I don't know. But I even if it was on the same weekend, I wouldn't see an issue because we proved it last weekend. Everyone behaved, everyone did what they were supposed to do, and everything's nice and clean. And anyways.
Further questions? Comments? If not, motion on the floor to accept. Those in favor? Those against? Motion is carried. Thank you. Motion to adjourn. Councillor Keel, Deputy Mayor, we are adjourned.
striking committee to order. Are there any disclosures of pecuniary interest in relation to the items on this agenda? Seeing none, I'd entertain a motion for the approval of the agenda. I have the Deputy Mayor, seconded by Councillor Keel. Those in favor? That is carried. We have minutes, striking committee, July 16th, 2024. I have it moved by Councillor Giacomo, seconded by Councillor Keel. Those in favor? And that is carried. Any business arising out of the minutes of July 16th, 2024? Seeing none. I understand, Councillor Plummer, you have a motion to move into a closed session.
That's correct. Moved by myself, second by Councillor, the Deputy Mayor. This meeting become a closed meeting to discuss personnel matters about identified individuals, including municipal and local board employees, regarding membership to Pembroke Economic Development Advisory Committee and to be appointed to the Transit Steering Committee as per section 2392B of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended.
Okay, call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. We will now move into a closed session. striking committee and caucus was held earlier to discuss personal matters about an identifiable individual, including municipal or local board employees regarding membership to the Pembroke Economic Development Advisory Committee and members to be appointed to the Transit Steering Committee as per section 239 sub 2 sub B of the Municipal Act 2001 as amended. There was no pecuniary interest declared, and a report concerning membership changes to PDAC as well as individuals to be appointed to committees will be discussed later in this agenda, and here we are at later. Pembroke Economic Development Advisory changes, Ms. Sutherland.
Well, I can do it.
Or you're going to do it, Madam Treasurer? There we go.
So this City of Pembroke currently has vacancies on PEDDAC. A striking committee and caucus was held earlier, and it was directed that a member be removed from committee as per the terms of reference, as well as that staff is directed to advertise to fill up to 2 vacancies until the end of the current term of council ending November 14th, 2026. So committee direction is requested regarding the membership. Thank you.
Thank you. And so does someone wish to make, you're looking for a formal motion, Madam Treasurer? Yes? Councillor Keel? Councillor Giacono?
Thank you, Your Worship, members of council. Your striking committee of council begs to report and recommend from its meeting held this evening as follows. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Plummer, that the recommended individual be removed from the Pembroke Economic Development Advisory Committee, and further that staff be directed to advertise to fill up to 2 vacancies until the end of the current term of council, ending November 14th, 2026, and awaiting your signature, Your Worship.
So we have the motion, call the question. Those in favor of that motion? Because we're only in committee. And that is carried. It's all good. It's all good. We're only in committee, so we're all good.
Okay, I'll learn.
So I'll come back to Madam Treasurer then. Next report, Transit Steering Committees.
So the City of Pembroke has created a new Transit Steering Committee to provide feedback on the on-demand transit project as per the committee's terms of reference. The vacancies are under the category of general public user position. An advertisement to the public was made via social media on Monday, July 22nd, with additional information and an application form located on the city's website under a new transit section. A striking committee and caucus meeting was held earlier, and it was recommended that Ankit Vyas, Stephen Bolt, Chad Leduc-Smith, Sean Turner, Ted Morioto be appointed to the Transit Steering Committee under the General Public User category, and that Mayor Gervais, Deputy Mayor Abdallah, and Councillor Jacquinot be appointed to the Transit Steering Committee as council members. Other committee members are appointed by the nature of their position for specific users and stakeholders as follows: Algonquin College Administration, Jamie Brandberger, Interim Dean; Algonquin College Student Association, Yanis Afloum and Francois Belanger, and other members of the executive. Retirement Home Representative Holly McDonald from Chartwell Retirement Residences. Renfrew County Social Services, representing Renfrew County Social Services, Andrea Patrick. Representing Pembroke Regional Hospital, Ralph Haddam. Representing other large employers, Crystal Bloom, manager of McDonald's. Representing the PBIA, Bethia Summers. And representing hotels and motels, Jessica Milligan from the Best Western. In addition, the staff will consult other partners, which may include the Renfrew County Joint Transportation Committee, Care4, and the local malls. Thank you. So committee direction is requested regarding the membership.
Thank you. So is there a motion that embodies what that direction is? Councillor Purcell?
The striking committee council begs to report and recommend from its meeting held this evening, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Fernier, that the striking committee appoint Anit Yavas and Robert Bolt, Chad Leduc-Smith, Sean Turner, Ted Morioto under the general public category, and Mayor Gervais, Deputy Mayor Abdallah, and Councillor Jack will be appointed to the Transit Steering Committee.
Thank you. So there's the motion, moved and seconded. Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. And a motion to adjourn striking committee for this evening. I have Councillor Keel, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Those in favor? And that is carried. We are adjourned from striking. Next up, council. council meeting to order for August 13th. I'd ask for everyone to please take a moment, please stand for an opening prayer or reflection. Before opening this meeting of council, I would ask those who wish, each in your own way, silently join in a prayer of guidance over these proceedings. Thank you. Are there any disclosure of pecuniary interest in relation to the matters on this council meeting agenda? Seeing none. We first come up to minutes, regular meeting of council, July 16, 2024. I'd entertain a motion for their approval. I have Councillor Lafreniere, seconded by the Deputy Mayor. Those in favor? That is carried. Then we have two adoption of minutes coming from committees. First is combined committee, July 16, 2024. I have Councillor Purcell, seconded by Councillor Plummer. Those in favor? That is carried. And striking was held that evening as well. So I have by Councillor Keel, seconded by Councillor Plummer. Those in favor? And that one is carried. Moving along to staff and committee reports. First up is striking committee membership changes. Councillor Giacono.
Your Worship, I was a little premature in reading this earlier, but it was handed to me, so my apologies. Your striking committee of council begs to report and recommend from its meeting held this evening as follows. Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Plummer that the recommended individual to be removed from the Pembroke Economic Development Advisory Committee, and furthermore, the staff be directed to advertise to fill up to 2 vacancies until the end of the current term of council, ending November 14, 2026. And that would be a second reading, I would believe, Your Worship.
Thank you. Striking committee of council begging to recommend and report from meeting held earlier this evening by Councillor Giacono, seconded by Councillor Plummer, recommending an individual be removed from the Economic Development Advisory Committee, and staff directing to advertise for up to 2 vacancies until the end of the current term of council ending November 14, 2026. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next, Councillor Purcell, striking committee appointment of members to transit steering.
Thank you, Your Worship. Your striking committee of council begs to report and recommend from its meeting held this evening, moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Lafreniere, that the striking committee appoint Ankit Viraz, Stefan Bolt, Chad Leduc-Smith, Sean Turner, Ted Morioto, under the general public category, and Mayor Gervais, Deputy Mayor Abdallah, and Councillor Giacono to be appointed to the Transit Steering Committee.
Thank you, Madam Clerk. Your striking committee of council begging to report and recommend from its meeting held earlier this evening. Moved by Councillor Purcell, seconded by Councillor Lafreniere. Striking committee appointing Anik Vias, Stephen Bolt, Chad Leduc-Smith, Sean Turner, and Ted Morto under general public category, and Mayor Gervais, Deputy Mayor Abdallah, and Councillor Giacono be appointed to the Transit Steering Committee. No comment. Those in favor? That is carried. Thank you. Next is combined committee, Isabella Street, catchment area number 1, tender contract. Councillor Plummer.
Thank you, Worship. Moved by myself, second by the Deputy Mayor, that tender contract number 23654-1 for Isabella Street, catchment area number 1, Moffat Street between Pembroke Street West and Renfrew Street be awarded to Bonisher Excavating Inc. for the contract value of $1,814,124.08 plus HST, and the additional expenditures in the amount of $75,000 be approved for the contingency allowance, and then a budget shortfall of $506,162.87 be funded from reallocated from surplus funds as detailed in the report. The total value of the recommendation equal $1,889,124.08 plus applicable HST.
Thank you again. Combined committee of council begging to report and recommend from meeting held earlier this evening by Councillor Plummer, second by the Deputy Mayor, the tender contract 23654-1 for Isabella Street, catchment area number 1, Moffat Street between Pembroke Street West and Renfrew Street be awarded to Bonisher Excavating for a contract value $1,814,124.08 plus HST. The additional expenditures in the amount of $75,000 be approved for contingency allowance, that the budget shortfall, $506,162.87, be funded from reallocated and surplus funds as part of this detailed report, and the total value of the recommendation equaling $1,889,124.08 plus applicable HST. Councillor Plummer, did you wish to comment?
This was discussed earlier in committee, and the reallocation was discussed in committee.
So much. Those in favor? That is carried. Next, Councillor Frenier, bylaws 2024-50, Pembroke Lumber Kings lease renewal.
Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Ian Keel, that bylaw 2024-50, a bylaw to authorize the entering into an agreement with the Pembroke Junior A Lumber Kings Hockey Club Incorporated, be adopted and passed. And further, that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Lefevre, seconded by Councillor Keel. Bylaw 2024-50, a bylaw to authorize the entering into of an agreement with the Pembroke Junior A Lumber King Hockey Club, Inc. be adopted and passed. Further, the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Councillor Lefevre.
Yes, I'm happy to say we have come to a new contract agreement with the Lumber Kings, so everyone can enjoy those games as well as maybe following the team through the Eastern Ontario. So that was great work by staff. Thank you.
Thanks so much. Call the question. Those in favor? That is carried. Next is 2024-51 encroachment agreement delegation. Councillor Giacono.
Thank you, Your Worship. Members of council, moved by myself, seconded by the deputy mayor, that bylaw 2024-51, bylaw to delegate encroachment agreement approvals to the chief administrative officer be adopted and passed, and further that the said bylaw be signed by the mayor and the clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation, and awaiting your signature, Your Worship.
Thank you. Moved by Councillor Giacono, seconded by the Deputy Mayor, that bylaw 2024-51, a bylaw to delegate encroachment agreement approvals to the Chief Administrative Officer be adopted and passed, and further that the said bylaw be signed by the Mayor and Clerk and sealed with the seal of the corporation. Councillor Giacono.
Thank you, Your Worship. As we all realize, certain encroachment agreements come before this council from time to time. This was discussed, at a previous meeting. I believe one of the most crucial things that came forward was this, when we discussed the cannabis production facilities within our community. There are currently no cannabis production facilities in Pembroke at this time. I think one of the issues was at the time that the federal government, which has allotted medicinal marijuana to be grown in certain venues or certain operations, there should be some sort of control as to odor, etc. And I believe that there was a direction that a letter be sent to our member of parliament seeking clarity on the parameters and processes for inspection on medical marijuana facilities and how odor control fits into acceptable ministry standards and thresholds. It's good to say you have controls, but when nobody comes to take a look at the controls, there are no controls. So hopefully our member of parliament will pass this along to through a bunch of smoke and mirrors, excuse the pun, to make sure that we find out exactly why these people are not being legislated or looked after. I mean, the residents that live within an area shouldn't be exposed to odor from marijuana. And I mean, people smoke at your neighbors, etc. But when you have a mass grow operation, it's a little different. You have school children that are exposed to it, etc. So that's what that's about. Thank you, Your Worship.
Thank you. Call the question. Those in favor? And that is carried. Next is Resolution 2024-20, 2023 Reserve and Reserve Transfers. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you, Your Worship. This is a long resolution. It's required for the Finance Department. It's our annual transfers. Moved by myself, seconded by Councillor Ed Giacono, that the Corporation of the City of Pembroke deems it expedient to transfer the following amounts to or from reserve funds for the 2023 fiscal year. Transfer $292,678.26 from equipment and vehicles reserved to finance capital equipment purchases, and transfer $23,000 $886.84 from the Heritage Mural Reserve Fund to finance 2023 deficit as approved by local board, and transfer $22,582.68 from the PBA reserve to cover the 2023 deficit as approved by local board, and transfer $15,000 from the physician recruitment reserve to support future positions, and transfer $15,869.65 to the disability reserve fund for firefighters 2024 sick leave liability, and transfer $386,318.01 from the general capital reserve to finance capital projects, and transfer $425,622.34 to the general capital reserve for the 2022 accumulated surplus, and transfer $150,000 from the general capital reserve to the general fund for the transit project, and transfer transit 223 general fund surplus of $149,709.98 to the transit reserve, and transfer $15,000 to the parking lot reserve per the 2023 budget, and transfer federal funding in the amount of $918,823.85 to the federal gas tax reserve, and transfer $91,990.23 to the library capital reserve for the 2023 surplus, and transfer $39,888.69 bequest revenue to the library bequest reserve, and transfer $7,000 from the 2023 library budget to the library capital fund to finance future building improvements, and transfer $2,000 budgeted sick leave contingency to library contingency reserve, and transfer $3,100 budgeted legal contingency to library contingency reserve, and transfer $5,318.83 from library multicultural festival reserve to cover the 2023 event deficit, and transfer provincial funding in the amount of $118,783.25 to dedicated gas tax reserve, and transfer $116,000 from dedicated gas tax reserve to Pembroke and area handy bus, and transfer $15,000 to the election reserve, and transferred $2,420 from the animal control reserve for spay-neuter clinic as previously approved by council, and transfer $1,700,212.92 from the federal gas tax reserve fund to finance capital, and transfer $92,086.43 to the water meter reserve for the 2023 surplus, and transferred $217,500 to the water tower reserve as per the 2023 budget, and transfer the 2023 waste management surplus in the amount of $177,227.96 to the waste management reserve, and transfer $83,797.84 from the water filtration reserve for the 2023 water deficit, and transfer $200,000 from the water filtration plant reserve to finance future capital, and, one more page here. Didn't tell me it was double-sided. Transfer $149,248 to the working fund reserves for projects carrying forward to 2023 to be reversed in 2024, and transfer $219,771.24 from the working fund reserves for the 2022 projects carried forward to 2023, and transfer $13,500 from the capital fund to the OPP Station Reserves Fund as per the 2023 budget, and transfer the 2023 sewer fund surplus in the amount of $155,081.97 to sanitary sewer capital reserve, transfer $100,000 to the pollution control reserve as per the 2023 budget, transfer $95,000 from the pollution control capital reserve to finance capital, and transfer $346,000 $2,226,004 to the Equipment Vehicles Reserve as per the 2023 budget, and transfer $200,000 to the Fire Equipment Reserve as per the 2023 budget, and transfer $55,000 from Fire Equipment Reserve to finance fire equipment and capital purchases. Transfer $29,160 to Animal Control as per the SPCA agreement, and transfer $90,000 from the Modernization Capital Grant to finance capital projects, and transfer $3,332.09 from the Community Improvement Plan Reserve for the 2023 deficit, and transfer $2,450 from Parks Development Reserve revenues received from capital projects, and transfer $107,865.60 from the COVID Safe Start Reserve Fund to finance capital projects, and transfer $26,000 from the Parking Reserve to finance capital, and transfer $213,839.68 from the Pollution Control Reserve to fund equipment purchases, and transfer $110,539.53 from the Pollution Control Reserve for the 2023 storm sewer expenditures, and transfer $127,788.48 from wastewater fleet equipment reserve to fund equipment purchases, and transfer $147,365 to the wastewater fleet equipment reserve as per the 2023 budget, and we're nearly done here. Transfer $226,428 from the water plant reserve to finance capital, and transfer $390,179,000 from the operating contingency to the aquatic center reserve, and transfer $250,000 to the aquatic center reserve from the 2022 accumulated surplus. Transfer $255,000 to the aquatic center reserve as per the 2023 budget, and transfer $193,524.55 from the aquatic center reserve to finance capital projects, and transfer $33,000 from the library contingency fund for 2023 projects as approved by the local board, and transfer $71,145.35 development charges revenue collected in 2023 to development charges reserve fund, and transfer $76,583 to the recreation building reserve fund as per the 2023 budget, and transfer $50,000 to the recreation building reserve for 2023 accumulated surplus, and transfer $150,000 to the transit reserve for the 2023 accumulated surplus, and transfer $250,000 to the emergency and disaster reserve fund for 2023 accumulated surplus, and transfer $102,800 from the development charges reserve fund to finance capital projects. The recreation building, did we up that to $100,000? You made the motion? So it's transferred $100,000 to the recreation building reserve. And, yes?
Madam Chair wishes to speak.
Yeah, go ahead.
So that's the 2022 recommendation, not
Okay.
not the 2020. The 2023 will come forward at a future
okay.
date.
Okay, I got lost in all the words. Okay, and that's the motion. Would you like to read that now?
So I understand council is willing to dispense with that. Did you wish to speak to it before you said?
Yeah, this is a standard thing every year, and I have the pleasure and honor of chair of the finance committee to read this. I want to thank Councillor Keel for giving it to me. I wasn't planning on being here, but I'm here tonight, and thank you very much.
Okay, so we'll call the question. Those in favor of that, that is carried. So if you want to slide her over. Thank you. Okay. Mayor's report. So good evening, everyone. I wish to bring forward my mayor's report at this time. July 17th, the Police Services Board, and I'll continue to call it that, even though I realize it has a more official, different name at this point, but in any event, some takeaways from our last meeting held on July 17th is that council should be aware that foot patrol is comparable to last year. The inspector is looking to reallocate 2 current officers to the street crime unit. As well, we were informed, as indicated at the last meeting, Killaloe will now be a zone to the Upper Ottawa Valley Detachment, so now there will be 5 zones. And we're informed that this will increase the odds of us getting more officers quicker. It is causing additional staff sergeants to be appointed so as to alleviate some of the additional work to our inspector. July 20th, I had the pleasure to attend with Councillor Keel at the Bob's Music 25th anniversary, and so how proud should we all be to have a business in our community that is an anchor business that's been here for that long, and that the community supports a business for that many years and gives livelihood and employs individuals right here in our community. Later that day, I was very pleased to see so many different members of council attending the multicultural event. I understand it's the 9th now annual one, and so I look forward to different comments from the different councillors as to what they take away from the multicultural event. But as I told my FM, certainly this is certainly a great way to celebrate the various cultures in our community and makes this area so special. On July 21st, I had the pleasure to attend a picnic to celebrate the 100th anniversary of the Pembroke Horticultural Society. And so how fortunate we are to have a strategic partner such as the Horticultural Society. I continue to receive different compliments from different individuals that come to our area for a variety of reasons. But one of the first things that they tell me is that our waterfront is stunning. So kudos to them and kudos to the strategic partnership that we have with them and for being in existence for 100 years and not just being in existence but thriving. July 23rd, I had the benefit of attending the Renfrew County District Health Unit Mayor's meeting. So there is monthly Mayor's meetings with the health unit to provide different information. One of the takeaways there is that the province is eliminating funding effective July 31st for monitoring viruses in the wastewater. So as many know or should know, that arising out of COVID, there was this new initiative where our wastewater was being analyzed to determine COVID numbers, flu numbers, and that sort of thing. And so this is a step back in my estimation that the province is cutting the funding that allows for the testing and allows to be better prepared as to what's coming our way because it shows up in our wastewater. July 24th, I attended the AGM of the Grind Pembroke together with Warden Emo as well as representation from the PBIA and others. It was very well attended. The audited financials were presented and comments provided by the chairs as well as the treasurer, and it was indicated by the accountant that all financials were in order. On August 2nd, I had the pleasure to welcome OPP Commissioner and his associates as they had a short stay in Pembroke before completing their bicycle journey raising money for various causes. It should be known that it's not very often that the commissioner comes to our area, so anytime that the commissioner is here, no different than the OAPSB, coming to Pembroke, you try to showcase Pembroke, show them what we're about, and make it memorable so the commissioner remembers who we are, particularly when we are attempting to get additional officers in our community. August 10th, I had the pleasure to attend the Cops and Kids Fishing Derby. There was close to 100 children present together, obviously with their parents and dogs and so forth. An excellent opportunity to have interactions between children and the OPP so that the children understand that the OPP are not to be afraid of and that they're here to help and to foster that relationship. No different than the reinstitution of police going back into the schools, which the school boards are finally agreeable to having that happen again. But in any event, it was an excellent day, lots of different fish caught. I felt bad for one particular child because the fish flopped out of the measuring device and he didn't want to go anywhere near the fish again. But in any event, it was a great event. I'm going to leave the Busker Fest because I'm sure there are a number of councillors that wish to speak to it, but I would just simply say that I thought it was absolutely awesome. to showcase, and I know I've shown different members of council previously, but an individual that is in our community by the name of Massimino. He's constantly taking photos. I'm sure you've seen him at a number of different events. I've presented his previous books to different individuals that visit to our community, but he has a new volume out, lots of different photos exclusively of Pembroke. Some are of photos, some of are from different buildings such as the Booth Building, the courthouse. So just an awesome takeaway for an individual in our community that sees the beauty in our community, and he's taking these different photos and he gets it published, and so certainly they can be purchased, but in addition, the city will purchase a number of them as giveaways to different individuals. And I conclude with, but not to minimize this, I want to wish Jolyn Wong, and I hope I'm pronouncing her name correctly, much success as she heads off to Paris for the Paralympics. She's an area resident, considers the city of Pembroke her home. Again, best wishes, and I'm looking forward to following you, as we all are, while you participate in the Paralympics. And as always, stay safe and be kind to one another. Notices of motion. Seeing none. Councillor updates. Deputy Mayor. Okay.
Thank you, Your Worship. Just a few items tonight. As Chair of the Public Library Board, I want to publicly thank Carthy Regimani and her staff for the leadership and our wonderful multicultural festival that was held a few weeks ago. Another solid turnout, thousands of people came. I want to thank the sponsors and volunteers. I want to, the vendors and everyone who performed. I want a special shout out to Joe Brown and Jordan DeRoche, Parks and Rec, who showed leadership and that day. You know, it's Saturday. People are, Parks and Rec work all the time, but especially on Saturday and the weekend, they're busy. And they really, we really appreciate their help. It's a really team effort. I had the pleasure of acting as stage manager again with Dorian, and he did a great job, Kids to Speak Productions. Just a fabulous event, and you know, the library staff, a lot of their time is volunteered for that event, and it's just wonderful. Busker Fest, on behalf of the PBA, we want to thank, and the city, we want to thank Joanna Els of the Nook Creperie for her vision and leadership. She just joined the PBA a few months ago. She came with this idea for Busker Fest. I want to thank her and the organizing committee, who raised over $40,000 in sponsorships. And you know, I was there all day Saturday, and as everybody else was, and the comment was the shops were busy, the restaurants were busy, the vendors, and they said they hadn't seen Pembroke like this since the 1980s. So this is a wonderful, wonderful event, and we want to thank everyone involved, organizers, volunteers, the City of Pembroke, PBA, and Joanna and committee. And we're looking forward to it again next year. A lot of work goes into it, and she'll be looking for more help. Just to conclude, Your Worship and Council, so proud of our community. Multicultural Festival, Busker Fest, thousands of people at the Canada Day celebration, Music for a Cause, which I wasn't able to attend. We have the upcoming fiddling and step dancing competition coming up, stereotypical event at La Sucilla in September. Now tonight we learned about a Ribfest in September, the OPV Golden Helmets. Krista Cleese is leading the night markets at the Farmers Market on Fridays for July and August. Santa Claus Parade. You know, folks are coming to Pembroke. Pembroke is the hub, the center, and we've proven that we can do it thanks to our wonderful community business members, volunteers, and Pembroke's a welcoming community. We've got a great community here, and all these events, like, come to Pembroke. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Keel.
Thank you, Your Worship. I'm going to pick up where the Deputy Mayor just left off, and that is to say that so many times, and I know I'm not the only one around this table, so many times all of us, I'm sure, have heard there's nothing to do in Pembroke. The list of things this year in 2024 that we have accomplished as a city, in large part to the organization of private individuals. So the Multicultural Festival, of course, is led by the library. Music for a Cause is a Robbie Dean Center initiative. Ribfest is going to be done privately. Joanne and her team, and it was a big team. To put together that Busker Fest was so incredible. You could stand at any intersection downtown this past weekend and look down the road, and you couldn't see pavement. All you saw was people, like something that you would see at a Toronto festival or a New York City festival. I mean, it was absolutely amazing. Certainly, we thank our Parks and Recs department. Mr. Lewis is also here from operations. I know they're quite involved in helping us have these events, and particularly in terms of the safety barriers and whatnot. And certainly to you, Mr. Lewis, and your team. There's lots of things that we couldn't do without you, but these events are just a single example. The mayor mentioned Bob's Music, Robbie Deschamps downtown, 25 years in business here in the city of Pembroke, and I think all of it, I think she said, was downtown in one location or another. I had the opportunity on August 3rd to attend at the marina for fire trucks and freezies, an example of our local fire department. Something as simple as driving a truck down, but the kids were just lit up. They got to ride in the truck, put on the hats and the helmets and the hugely overgrown coats. And that was in partnership with the library, who was giving out the freezies. So again, another event, but there were dozens of children down there for that one. We mentioned Pembroke night markets. Those are continuing this month, every Friday night, from 5 until 9 p.m. What an amazing use of our farmers market space, that usually on a Friday night wouldn't be doing anything. So that vision to have that market, and there are hundreds of people down there every single Friday. I think thus far I've only missed one because I was in Ottawa, but it is a very well attended market. Upcoming, I just want to say Festival Hall update. Of course, Festival Hall again is hosting the Pembroke Fiddling and Step Dancing competition. But then on September 21st, so Festival Hall typically sort of has a bit of a break in the summers. I think many institutions do. But on September 21st, a tribute to ZZ Top and Stevie Ray Vaughan. That will be the first Festival Hall event on the fall calendar. And next Thursday, August 22nd, we have Putts and Pints, which is one of our economic development events. So come down to Riverside Park. If you haven't seen our mini putt, it's been refurbished, and a bit of the vegetation has been cut back. It's looking great. I was there in June when we were having free mini putt on Thursdays, I think it was. So Putts and Pints, if you're a business owner, you want to grab a beer, and maybe there'll be some nice collegial bets on the side of who can get the lowest score. I'm sure it won't be me, but I hope to see everybody down there.
Thank you. Other members of council? Councilor Purcell?
Just wanted to comment on the 60th anniversary of the Renfrew County District Health Unit. As you're well aware, over the course of the 6 decades, Renfrew County District Health Unit has been instrumental in safeguarding and advancing the well-being in community through its commitment in disease prevention, injury prevention, health promotion, emergency response, and health equity supports, and various other valid services. So had the pleasure of attending a lunchtime at the Waterfront Park, along with Mayor Gervais and our MPP, John Yakubuski, that said some very fine words in regards to the commitment of the Renfrew County District Health Unit over this past 6 decades. That being said, there was an opportunity for the existing board and boards in the past, as well as current employees and past employees, just to kind of get together and talk about some of the successes and challenges of the past, and looking forward to continuing with Renfrew County District Health Unit. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillor Purcell, I understand you have a motion to move into a closed session.
Moved by myself and seconded by Councillor Keel that this meeting become a closed meeting to discuss the proposed or pending acquisition or disposition of lands by the municipality as per section 239(2)C of the Municipal Act regarding the offer to purchase land in McCool Business Park and a potential acquisition of land, the former CN lands B Trail.
Thank you. So call the question. Those in favor? And it's carried. We will now move into a closed session. Thank you.